Video, we introduced the concept of getters and setters. The idea is that we don't want to allow the user to access an attribute directly, such as the hour attribute in a time object. Instead, we're always going to force the user to go through method calls. So if they want to use the attribute in an expression, well, now they're going to have to use the getter. And if they want to change the attribute, well, they have to go through a setter. So in this case, I have changed the time to 4:30. The advantage of using the setter is that if I try to set it to anything that will violate the invariant, then the assert statements inside of the setter will shut that down. Except that the attribute is still there. And there's nothing preventing me from going in here and changing its value and corrupting the time object. In fact, I know about the attributes because they are explicitly here inside of the class specification. So what do I do about that? Okay, let's look at one more example of the time class, but I'm not going to show the code just yet. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import time3, and now I'm going to make a time3 version of a time object. We'll assign it to S, like this. And here we go. Now, this has getters and setters, so if I want to get the hour, that's 2. If I want to set the hour, let's set it to 4. All right. So if I look at the time, it is currently 4:30. But if I try to access hour, I get an error because there is no attribute called hour. I mean, okay, yes, I could try to use this in an assignment statement. Let's assign it to Fred. But here's the deal. There was never any hour to begin with, so none of the methods know that hour exists. I mean, look, and that's fine, right? You can add all of the extra attributes that you want to an object, but as long as the methods don't know about these attributes, then they might as well not be there, and you're not actually corrupting the object. What we're talking about here is what is known as data encapsulation. The idea is that we want to make it impossible, or nearly impossible, for the user to access the attributes without going through the methods. So in this case, the reason why you couldn't actually change the hour was because, well, there was no hour to begin with. So how do I do that? Well, okay, so let's back up and let's talk about one other thing first. So I'm going to look at this time object, and I'm going to scroll down and look at some of the methods here. So we have the getters and the setters, we have the initializer, we have this increment, we have the string helper, and oh, look at this method down here at the bottom. This IAmHidden. When we come up with method names, they follow exactly the same rule as variable names. They can contain letters, numbers, and underscores, and they can't begin with a number. Oh, but they can begin with an underscore. Huh. And that's what I've done here. So does that do anything special? Because we've seen like the 2 underscores are special. What about 1? Well, okay, so I'm going to clear the screen. And I'm going to use the help function to get help on the time class. And when you do that, it's going to give you the complete interface. I get the class specification. If I hit space, I'm going to scroll down and I see all of the methods and their specifications. And now I'm done. And I never saw this method at all. That's because it's hidden. That's what happens. When you put an underscore before the name of a method, it is hidden. And so as far as the help menu is concerned, it does not exist. So, okay, so that means that a user who's using this class won't know about this particular method. Now, it is still there, right? And if they were somehow able to figure out that it existed, they can still call it. So I'm going to call IAmHidden, and I get an answer of 42. It's just that it's not in the documentation. And look, using a method like this that does not appear in the help menu, this is an egregious form of undocumented behavior. If somebody in your company does this, they should be fired immediately and security should be called to escort them from the building. All right? I mean, look, because that's the only thing that we can do in Python, right? We can document things or not document things, and if they're not documented, then you should not be accessing them. We don't have these lockdown features like public or private that you might have heard of in other languages like Java or C++. Okay, so with that in mind, we're going to use this philosophy of hiding things to implement data encapsulation. So let's go over to time 3. And as you can see, the issue is that I don't actually have an attribute called hour. So if I look, here's my time S. What I have is an attribute called underscore hour. And of course, if I were bad, and change that to Fred, now I have corrupted the object. So, okay, what I'm doing is I'm hiding the attributes, just like I'm hiding the methods. Now, what does it mean to hide attributes in an object? Well, let's go to the Python tutor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my example class, which starts off as an empty class folder. Then I'm going to create the example object, which is an empty folder. But now I'm going to add an attribute to it. And I'm going to add the attribute _a. Huh. And nothing happened. The folder is still empty. Oh no, it's not actually empty. There is an attribute there. The _a attribute is there, and it has a value of 20. But it's hidden. And so the Python tutor will not show it to you at all, because the Python tutor will never show anything that is hidden. It's meant to be hidden. So that's the same philosophy it is here, right? If it has an underscore, it's meant to be hidden, and no one other than the person who is the definer of the class is allowed to access that. And when I mean definer of the class, I mean, even if you're the definer, you can't use it as a user. You may only use it inside of the module file that contains the class definition. And that's what was going on here. So if I go look at here, I have, okay, I have _hour, and I have _minute, and all of those are hidden. And this is, the user is only going to be able to access things through the setters and the getters. Now there's one other important thing that I should mention here, which is hidden means hidden. So therefore, I should not be including it in the class specification. So you notice that in the class specification, there is no mention of any attributes in this class whatsoever. I mean, there are attributes, right? I have getters and setters, but that's okay. Because when the user is using a class, they're looking at the entire interface. They're not just looking at the class specification here, they're also looking at all the method specifications. And when the user sees that there is a getter and a setter, they know, okay, there are these attributes like hour and minutes, but I'm not allowed to access them directly, I just go through the methods. However, you'll notice that I've done one more thing here, which is, look, there are these underscore attributes. And they have their own invariants, namely that _hour should be between 0 and 23, and _minimum should be between 0 and 59. And even though I'm the definer, I do like to write down these invariants because, as we've seen, well, we need to keep track of them when we implement our methods, because when the method call is done, we need to make sure that the class invariant is satisfied. But in this case, I don't need anybody else to know it. I don't need the user to know it. So it is not going to be part of the interface. It is not going to appear in any docstring. Instead, I'm just going to use these hashtag comments. So this is the first time that we've seen that the hashtag comments are incredibly important, because hashtag comments do not go into the help system. They are notes to me as the definer to help me understand how this class works. So what you've seen now is that I'm using the two types of comments, the docstring and the hashtag comments, to clearly separate interface from implementation. The interface is the things that only the user needs to know about. But anything the user doesn't need to know about, I'm not going to contain in the interface. Instead, I'm going to put it in this hashtag comment for myself and myself only.